It is week 10 of the fantasy football season. For most of you, 1 month left in the regular season. We are getting you ready for the playoff push on the Radio.com Sports Fantasy Football Show. What's up, everybody? My name is Steven Andrus, joined by Jesse Pantusco and Jordan Cohn from the Radio.com Sports staff. It is the Radio.com Sports Fantasy Football Show. As always, we have 3 segments for you. Pick them up. Those are waiver wire options as well as the stream team. And then Stealthy starts to wrap up the show. But we always begin with pick 'em up, waiver wire options owned in less than 50% of leagues. And I'll kick things off here with a guy I kind of want to hold my nose and pick up. I'm not really excited about it, but his usage is there. Washington running back Jeudy McKissic. And this is really in line with Alex Smith now likely starting for the rest of the season for Washington with that really tough injury to Kyle Allen. With Alex Smith at quarterback, he has thrown 49 passes this season. 18 of them have gone to McKissic. That's a 37% target share. McKissic with 6+ receptions in 4 of his past 5 games. 14 targets a week ago from the check down specialist, Alex Smith. In Smith's 2 games that he's seen the field, 10.9 and 17.2 PPR points for J.D. McKissic. Not excited about it, but in PPR leagues, I think he is functional. Jesse, you have a guy that could get some help here with an injury.
Yeah. If you have any free agent auction money left, I'd recommend spending a chunk of it on Texans running back Duke Johnson. We're used to seeing Duke take a backseat to workhorse David Johnson, but with DJ in the concussion protocol, Johnson took center stage in Week 9, earning a career-high 16 carries into 41 rushing yards and a touchdown, his first of 2020. Johnson didn't have a very efficient game against Jacksonville, but his career 4.3 yards per carry average would suggest he's capable of much more. As you know, the 2-6 Texans have spent much of the year playing from behind. Negative game script is usually a poison pill for running backs. That's never been a concern for Johnson, who is universally regarded as one of the top receiving backs in all of football. Looking ahead, Johnson is headed back to Cleveland for a revenge game against the Browns in Week 10. After being traded last summer, Johnson should have plenty of motivation to stick it to his former team.
I love it. It all aligns with the revenge game, too. It's like the trifecta here with David Johnson going down. How annoying is it, by the way, to go check the box scores on Sunday and not be able to figure out which one was Duke and which one was David? Like, I can't get over
Johnson, yeah.
Can we get a second letter in his first name in the box scores, please? All right, Jordan, who is your pick 'em up for this week?
I'm going to go with someone who I'm hoping we didn't miss our peak window of performance with, but I'm going to go with Curtis Samuel of the Carolina Panthers. If we're waiting until now to claim him off the waivers, not in terms of ownership percentage, but in terms of his peak performance, we could be a little bit late. He's been a top 6 wide receiver in each of the past 3 weeks, 6th in Week 7, 5th in Week 8, 5th in Week 9 so far. Overall, in that span over the past 3 weeks, the number 5 wide receiver in fantasy football. Comparatively, his teammates DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson are 23rd and 29th. Is this sustainable is the golden question? Perhaps, and I'd much rather find out that the answer is yes with him on my team as opposed to on an opponent's team. And the Panthers defense is going to continue to be nothing special. There's some matchups ahead that promise a lot of offense. The Bucks, the Lions, and the Vikings before the bye, the Broncos and the Packers afterward. So again, we'll find out if Samuel's production is for real in the coming weeks. But without an impactful tight end, and even with CMC's return, we see that this offense is capable of providing a lot of fantasy value for the wide receivers.
And hats off to Matt Rule, man. He has made that offense so exciting this year. That's a team that I can't wait to see in year 2 in 2021. But he's got a lot of pieces useful there for fantasy football in 2020. Let's move on to the stream team. This is our top quarterback, tight end, and defensive streaming option among those owned in less than 50% of leagues that you can not only pick up but start this week based on the matchup. And Jesse, you have our top QB streaming option.
Derek Carr is never a guy you're psyched about starting, but I think he could come in handy this week. The narrative surrounding Carr has always been that he's a risk-averse game manager who'd rather dump it off to a running back or tight end than stretch the field vertically. But that couldn't be further from the truth. For instance, Sunday we saw Carr complete passes of 53 and 45 yards, the latter going for a touchdown in a 31-26 Raiders win. Carr doesn't shoot himself in the foot with turnovers. He's only been intercepted twice this year, and his completion percentage is hovering around 70. which speaks to his elite accuracy. Now Carr draws the Broncos at home in Week 10. Understand, this Denver defense isn't the dominant unit it once was. Gone are the no-fly zone days of Aqib Talib and Chris Harris in the secondary with Von Miller up front. These days, Denver's top defensive back is A.J. Bouye, and he missed last week's game with a concussion. Even if he suits up against Vegas, I like Carr's chances against a defense Matt Ryan lit up for 3 touchdowns in Week 9.
I have tight end streamers this week, and in most weeks it's been scraping the bottom of the barrel, especially in recent weeks for us here on this show. But I actually saw 2 options I like this week, Dallas Goedert and Austin Hooper. And my top option is Cleveland tight end Austin Hooper. He missed a couple of weeks getting his appendix removed, but returned to practice during the bye week. He should be good to go. Couple that with Odell Beckham Jr.'s season-ending injury. And I like the outlook here. In the 2 games that Hooper missed, Cleveland targeted tight ends 14 times over that span. In Week 10, they get a home game against the Houston Texans, as we mentioned a little earlier. 11th most fantasy points allowed to tight ends, but over the last 4 weeks, the 2nd most fantasy points per week allowed to tight ends. And they face Jacksonville, Tennessee, and Green Bay. Not exactly a murderer's row of offenses with elite tight ends. So based on the matchup, recent usage to the position, I like Austin Hooper as a streaming tight end option in week number 10. Jordan, streaming defense.
Yeah, in Week 10, the Philadelphia Eagles play against the New York Giants. Need I say more? Probably not. But the Philadelphia Eagles are the defense that I'm going to go with here. The worst a fantasy defense has done against the Giants in 2020 was against the Washington football team in Week 9. And Washington still got 7 fantasy points. Reminder, a fantasy defense in the top 10 this year averages 7.3 fantasy points. And that is the lowest a team has been able to pull off against the Giants offense. There are some guys on the Eagles, like cornerback Darius Slay, whose statuses will be ones to monitor ahead of the Week 10 division matchup. But regardless of who's on the field, the turnover potential for Danny Dimes and co. remains sky high. Did you see Evan Engram juggle that ball last week in the hands of the Washington defense? Any defense playing a team capable of that amount of gaps on a weekly basis is one that I'm ready to plug into my lineup at any time.
I'm going to make a quick mention, too, looking ahead to the final 3 weeks of fantasy regular seasons. And the Dolphins' schedule for that, the Dolphins' defense schedule is fantastic. And they keep continuing to make huge plays. So love your pick for Week 10, Jordan. If you want to get a jump start on Week 11, maybe check out the Dolphins out there on your waiver wire. Let's move on to stealthy starts. These are players started in less than 50% of leagues that, based on the matchup, we think you can plug in and play in week number 10. Jordan, let's have you kick this one off with a stealthy start wide receiver.
Sure thing. And mine is going to be a duo because an injury possibility is there. But I'm going to go with Alan Lazard, and if he's unable to go, I'll go with his teammate Marquez Valdes-Scantling. The last few weeks against the Jaguars, who the Packers play in Week 10, wide receivers have found success a lot through the deep ball. Deshaun Watson found Brandon Cooks deep 3 times in Week 6 and Will Fuller deep for a touchdown in that same matchup. This past week, Cooks and Fuller torched the secondary of Jacksonville again for a pair of touchdowns. And in Week 7, Kenny Golladay found success with the deep ball. In Week 8, Jalen Guyton caught a 70-yard touchdown against the Jaguars. The key word there is the deep ball. And while Devontae Adams is the primary target hog far and away for Aaron Rodgers, Alan Lazard and MVS are both big deep threats in that offense. Before Lazard's injury, he was the number 7 receiver in fantasy football after 3 weeks. 3 of his 13 catches went for 35 yards or more, including a 72-yard play. So he can wreak havoc all over the field, anywhere in the secondary. And again, if Lazard isn't able to go, he's coming back from a big injury, then MVS is someone who can fulfill that same role.
You give me a chance to put this baby on in the middle of the show, I'm going to take it, Jordan.
I love it.
The cheesehead from Lambeau. Let's go. All right, Jesse, who you got?
Like Carrot Top with the props there. First off, I want to apologize to our viewers last week for recommending Justin Jackson as my stealthy start. That was a big swing and a miss. But we're going to get it right this time with Broncos receiver Jerry Jeudy. Jeudy is already one of the game's top route runners, and it's finally showing up in the stat sheet, with the rookie going for career highs in both yards and catches in Sunday's loss to Atlanta. With Drew Lock healthy again, Jeudy has been much more involved of late, logging a combined 24 targets over his last 2 outings. Noah Fant tweaked his ankle Sunday, and though he did return after a brief absence, he clearly wasn't himself, seeing just 2 targets the rest of the way. With Fant hobbled, don't be surprised if Jeudy plays a major role when the Broncos travel to Vegas in Week 10.
I like it. I'm going to give you guys a running back option for Stealthy starts. And like Jordan's, it's a combo platter here. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. This is contingent on Mark Ingram still being out with that high ankle sprain. He didn't practice all week last week, so I think it's a good chance this week. And in Week 10, the matchup is at New England. Over the past 4 weeks, the Patriots are allowing the second most fantasy points per game to the running back position, allowing more than 5 yards per carry and 6 touchdowns over those past 4 weeks to running backs, 6 rushing touchdowns. In these 2 games, though, without Ingram, it's been a 50-50 split between Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Week 8, 16 touches for Dobbins, 16 for Edwards. Week 9, 14 touches for Dobbins, 13 for Edwards. Dobbins is the explosive player. He's the guy that might give you a shot at a 100-yard game. But Edwards is clearly the goal line back right now when it's not Lamar Jackson. Edwards has touchdowns near the goal line in back-to-back weeks. And that was despite fumbling at the goal line at Indianapolis and then John Harbaugh going back to him later in the game and giving him another goal line opportunity, which he cashed in on. So based on the matchup and if Mark Ingram is out, I like these guys as possible plug-and-play options as a flex consideration or if you're desperate for an RB2 in week number 10. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Radio.com Sports Fantasy Football Show. As always, if you have any questions, trade questions, lineup questions, you can leave them in the comments, and we'll be happy to answer them for you this week. Just give us a like on this video and share it, and we'll get to your questions as fast as we can. For Jordan Cohn, for Jesse Pantusco, I'm Steven Andress. Good luck in week number 10.